Here's what's coming up on today's show.
Back to what Connie had said about the fee versus the fine and going into Disneyland. He says at the very end of the chapter, sometimes it rains at Disneyland. But if you view the admission fee as a fine, you'll never enjoy the magic. Find the price, then pay it.
This is the Money Master Podcast from Brindle and Bay Wealth Management with Tori Tenhagen, Connie Davis, and certified financial planner Nick Davis.
Welcome back to the Money Master Podcast. We are doing another book club with the Psychology of Money with Morgan Housel as the author. Morgan Housel is not here with us. I almost sounded like that.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, this is chapter 14 and 15. All right, chapter 14 and 15, if you've got your books to follow along. If you don't, you want to go back and find the other episodes from chapter 1, you're welcome to do that. People have told us they've enjoyed this book. I know I've enjoyed this book. We're sitting here in the office, got the books wide open, and we're ready to talk about key things.
It reminded me of like being in church. Where they everybody turn to chapter so-and-so. Get your book, get your Bibles out. So you just sounded like.
Yes, it reminds,
Please turn to chapter.
John chapter 4. Yes.
Well, we are at chapter 14. You'll change. Really?
Long-term planning is harder than it seems because people's goals and desires change over time.
So true.
We've never seen that happen, right? We've never changed one financial plan. We do it once and it's done.
Yeah.
Haha.
We're always changing.
Yeah.
We're always changing.
I mean, that's a lot of why we want to meet with our people at least once a year because things change.
Yeah.
You decide you want to move or, you want to change and plan for this vacation or can I do that? And they just, you didn't plan for that the first time.
Right.
So we got to redo some planning.
Yeah. It's a big fallacy to believe that your financial plan is a one and done thing. It's a moving document all the time. Sometimes it's once a year, but as you get ready to retire, we might see people 4 or 5 times just as they're getting ready to land that plan on the strip there and finally enter their next chapter.
Yeah. The thing that I underlined in here on page 153, the trick is to accept the reality of change and move on as soon as possible. I think, and the book pointed out that so many times we get stuck in our thought process of, well, this is, or like people, I think he used the example, people get stuck in a job that they went to school for went to college for when they were 18, right? And decided to do this before they were 21. And now all these years later, they just stay in this job. And it's so easy to do that, right? To not get comfortable with being okay with change. And so accepting the reality of it and moving on as soon as possible. That
your goals change.
Yeah, that your goals change.
Desires change.
Yeah, exactly. Your ideas, your sometimes your philosophies on life change,
Well, and I think there comes like you said, accepting it and honesty with yourself because I feel like that sometimes with financial planning is people, you can't say, well, I'll be fine with lower income if you're not, because you're going to crash your financial plan. You have to be honest about what you're really wanting and know it because you can't plan for it if you're not going to be honest with yourself about what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think one hindrance to knowing that things change is sometimes that fatalist mindset says, well, I shouldn't plan at all because things are going to change. And that's not what it is at all, really. It's, okay, in general, we want you to focus on the thing that's exciting and what's next for you, but also know that we're not leaving out the stuff that's also going to be more challenging so that we can face that phase. So let me just give you the most extreme worst situation, which is I'm really excited about all these vacations and not having a boss, but someday there's going to be a solo phase or a phase where I'm navigating healthcare and it's not going to be as fun. And I'm going to probably have to change my lifestyle even at that point, like after I've already been retired even. And I think it's okay when you can tell somebody, it's helpful when you can tell somebody when that time comes, you've got what it takes to make the adjustments. And we're already planning for those adjustments that you have to make. But right now, let's live in this phase. Let's live in this journey the way it is. And, we just recently had somebody pass away and that spouse is going through a major change. And it's an adjustment. It's a season. And that person had all the tools in place and pieces in place to make it work in the next season. But it's an adjustment that you can't figure out today.
Yeah.
So
you can't plan for that when you're just newly retired, right?
Yeah.
That's not something you're thinking about. And you shouldn't necessarily be thinking about that in detail. You should have it on the radar, but not
Yeah.
planning for it tomorrow.
Well, if you're 30 years old, you should be thinking about when I want to stop working, I want to be generally like
Right.
this. And you should have an abstract picture, and you should know you're saving enough dollars to get there and that those dollars are in the right tax buckets and that you're mitigating as much risk as you can. And then
Right, but I'm not
that's-
working on how to claim Social Security right now.
Right.
Right? Like you're not
Yeah.
thinking so far ahead that you're just stuck in the
Yes.
weeds.
Yeah. So I think being okay with it is great. You know, many times I see people say that they want to work forever or longer. Like somebody will come in here and they're in their 60s and they're like, I just love working. I don't see myself ever quitting. And then that same person will come in 2 years later and say, they just put some young kid above me in management. I can't stand my job. I'm quitting right now. You know, in fact, true story, there was a person who, she was a manager of a garden center for like many locations of a store, big box store. She says, I want to retire in 6 years. And we're like, great, let's plan for you to retire in 6 years. Well, everything is great. 2 years later, she comes in the door and says, that's it, I'm done. You got to help me to retire right now because I hate it. And so that's an example of our goals change, you know, and so we have to just be adaptable because our plans are going to evolve. Another quote from this chapter, it's okay to admit that you want different things than you once thought you did. And, you know, I think maybe some people struggle with that. Like, you know, saying, hey, I used to want this, but now I want something different. I see this where people want to live in a certain size of house. They're like, hey, if I work longer, I can have this bigger house and I can have this different lifestyle. But then what happens is they get tired faster than they thought. They want to work less faster. So instead of like constantly spending and accruing more debt, they probably should be, you know, this is where financial planners are not very popular because sometimes we have to kind of just say, hey, you know, this is going to come sooner than you think. And you're just creating a wall of stress
This is what it's going to take
for
to get
yourself. Yeah. So
there.
how
Not
about
just in numbers, emotionally,
yeah.
physically. This one's going to cost you.
Right. So how can you negotiate that and find a compromise to where you don't find yourself in that situation? Like that's one of the values of a financial planner that you cannot quantify in dollars.
Well, it says that on page 150. An underpinning of psychology is that people are poor forecasters of their future selves. Imagining a goal is easy and fun. Imagining a goal in the context of the realistic life stresses that grow with competitive pursuits is something entirely different. So it's fun to imagine what retirement can look like, but thinking about if this is the retirement I want, this is what I have to do. This is how long I have to work. This is the job I have to have. That's different.
So you said what was the quote again? They're poor forecasters of what?
Their future selves.
Their future selves. So true. It's so hard to imagine what that's going to be like. In fact, I think I remember the chapter, I can't find it right now, talking about how people say, you know, they're only thinking about those 15 vacations and the stuff that they can do. And then it's like, okay, it's hard to imagine what they're going to be like after that. Like socially, how are they going to be, you know, mentally, what's going to give them a sense of value? Like that is such a hard thing. They can't actually imagine it very well. So any work that you can do to help yourself imagine it's going to help you, which is why we, during the financial planning process, ask people 2 gut punch questions, which we won't share on this episode. We've shared in other episodes that really get you journaling and thinking and help you to actually kind of live into that next season. But that's a great quote. We're very poor at imagining the future. In fact, I remember a guy who retired a couple years ago. This must have been, 8 years ago now. And 6 months after retiring, he retired from Raytheon. 6 months after retiring, he says, gone fishing a bunch of times, done a couple of vacations. What's next?
What else is there to do?
Yeah. What else should I do? I'm like, I'm not your counselor. I'm not your life coach. I don't know, and this is our pursuit though, is to help, somehow bridge that gap. Right. All right. Another quote. What you want today might not be what you want tomorrow. Planning for a future self you don't know well is one of the hardest parts of long-term planning. So that kind of emphasizes what we just talked about. Yeah. So key takeaway from this chapter for me is just that we're all in flux and it's difficult to learn to be okay with that.
Yeah. The very last little section in this chapter says, embracing the idea that financial goals made when you were a different person should be abandoned without mercy versus put on life support and dragged on can be a good strategy to minimize future regret.
Wow. That was a pretty loaded.
Yeah, that was hefty.
Yeah, explain that to me.
Well, I'll read it again. Embracing the idea that financial goals made when you were a different person should be abandoned without mercy versus put on life support and dragged on can be a good strategy. So not just trying to keep it alive. I'm just going to keep doing this, but you're not happy.
Yeah.
That's not really what you want. You've changed your mind. Let's move forward.
When you're a different person.
Yeah. You've changed.
Okay. An example I can think of is single lady retires. True story. She wants to buy a second house in Hawaii because she wants to have this life in Hawaii and also in Texas. But as time goes on, one of her relatives was going to go in with her on it. Just kind of got a little bit messy, didn't really want to do that. She feels like now it's more important for her to be a little bit more of a homebody, and she embraces that and actually wants to make her home in Texas a little bit more like something she would really love long term. So she totally abandoned that entire plan, which we had built into her plan. And, sometimes you have to be willing to kind of just let go of certain things and kind of know when it's...
Well, it's kind of deciding who you're going to be loyal to, like your old self, like what you decided in the past, or if you're going to move forward and be like, okay, this is what I want now, though, and that's what I got to stick to.
True. I think people struggle with this in terms of thinking about where they want to live in retirement. There's the sky's the limit when you don't have a job, and people struggle with, oh my gosh, I could live on a pond I could live on a river in Tennessee. And
then your kids move somewhere, or they have grandkids, and you want to stay close. Well, but that was our dream. What do we do? And,
But then when you really idolize that house in that certain place, and you decide that it's really not practical, it's hard to move on unless you can let go of that. So you have to let go of that and embrace where you're at now. And so, good lessons. Hey there. Quick break to let you know that each week I send out an email. It's called Nick's Memo. Super creative name, I know. But this isn't your normal market commentary. It's my thoughts to help you make sense of what's going on in the financial world. So for example, I'll give you a few of the last week's headlines. One of them was called Life Cycle of Bull Markets. And I talk about the 4 phases of bull markets and how you can tell which phase that we're in. Or another topic the week before that was called Comfort is a Moving Target. And I talked about the crises that we hear about, that we see, that we genuinely face all the time. It is disturbing, but how to put that into perspective and be okay regardless of what we're hearing and seeing. And one more topic for you, a couple weeks before that, is what does it take to feel wealthy? And that was based on an interesting study about how much money people have, and yet they still feel they don't feel wealthy. So what does it take to feel wealthy? So if you're interested in getting that every Friday, then all you have to do is text us the word MEMO. That's MEMO. And you're going to text it to our business line at 214-988-9178. That's 214-988-9178. And we'll get you subscribed to the weekly memo. All right, next chapter is chapter 15, and it is titled Nothing is Free. Nothing's free.
Everything has a price, but not all prices appear on labels.
Not all prices appear on labels.
I think that's kind of what we've been talking about in the past couple chapters is, what's it going to cost you to get to that goal? How much are you going to have to work? How much longer? What's it going to cost your family? Time with your kids? Those kinds of things.
Those are invisible costs.
Those are prices you don't see.
Morgan talks about that being an invisible cost in this chapter, right? He talks about visible costs and hidden costs. So, for example, he gives the example buying a home. The visible cost of buying a home is the price, maybe the closing costs, but then there's hidden costs like ongoing maintenance. Maybe you have to manage the property. Maybe it's not your primary home. Maybe it's a rental property. It's like there's the hidden cost of some of the stress there. He also gives the example of investing in the stock market, says that the visible cost of buying stocks is the price you pay for the stocks, but the hidden price is the emotional toll of dealing with market volatility, uncertainty about your allocation or your performance. We see that all the time. People have I've done a good job to this point, but I don't want to stress about my allocation anymore. I want to know I'm doing what's best for me, so I want to delegate this to a team. So those are some of the hidden costs versus visible costs. One other one that I kind of added to the chapter is when you're not delegating your retirement plan to a team. So meaning the cost of not delegating your retirement plan to a team, doing it yourself. So the visible cost is the advisor fee you save. Right. And as long as, to be fair, as long as you truly save it, because I did a whole video, it's about 18 or 20 minutes long on YouTube about fees and costs and how they hide. And a lot of times people don't realize they're actually paying multiple managers. But let's just say you do save your advisor fee. So it's okay, I'm saving there, but the hidden cost is mistakes, stress versus maybe saving countless hours of frustration. Those are maybe some of the hidden costs. Could be the hidden cost of helping you just to make a better decision. Tori, you found a hidden cost for somebody yesterday when you were meeting with somebody.
Yeah, just things that would have
what was
tipped
it?
off. If you took an extra distribution this year, you're going to get to the IRMA level and have an extra cost in your Medicare that they wouldn't have known or seen, but that would have carried on for them for a little bit.
Yeah,
and caused an
that was a
impact on
hidden
their
cost.
plan.
Yeah. There's another person that we're meeting with today, and you met with them yesterday as well.
Yeah,
and they're talking about the hidden cost of their dividend stocks.
Yeah, in a taxable account of I'm making all this return, but I was like, but you're also paying taxes because of the account type it's in, the tax bucket it's in.
Yeah.
Should we put that over here? And the things that they just don't see.
So maybe recommend they put the dividend stocks in their IRA. Yeah. So hidden costs versus visible costs. Another quote: "The trick is to convince yourself that the market's fees, the price of volatility and uncertainty are worth it." So that quote is kind of out of left field from what we were talking about, but it's in the same chapter. He just talks about how the cost of investing in the stock market isn't just financial, it's also emotional and psychological toll of enduring market volatility. And we have to recognize and accept the hidden costs, good and bad, so that we can be long-term investors, and that it's necessary to trick yourself, to convince yourself that the price of being invested in the stock market is worth it. Why? Because we have the goal of maintaining our income, our monthly paycheck in retirement forever with inflation, right? So we have to do that.
He also talked towards the end of the chapter about viewing it as a fee versus a fine, which it's one word difference, but it makes such a big mental difference. Like when we're paying a fee, like we don't mind paying a fee. Like we pay a fee, like he used the example of Disneyland tickets. That's a fee, we're paying a fee. But if we got a fine is a negative. It makes you feel bad. I got fined with a ticket, right?
Yeah.
So viewing paying fees like advisor fees, as it's a fee. It's the cost of
the experience I want to have. If I'm paying for
investing.
Disney World, I'm getting a Disney World experience.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. The numbers, like even investing in the stock market, the volatility is the price you pay to have the returns that ultimately are serving your retirement goals, right? The goal is not necessarily the returns. That helps further the goal of that. And I keep going back to all my meetings yesterday, but that someone said that to me in a meeting is I have someone who's a similar age to me, actually a little bit younger, and she's already almost able to retire because she's had a financial planner for years. And what she was telling me is that she's been prepared. Mm-hmm. She's had this feeling of I can do this, and we don't have that just yet.
She paid a fee versus a fine. The fine is I'm not prepared. I'm suffering a penalty because I didn't do something.
The financial planner gave her some confidence to move forward in her goal. And the couple I met with was saying, I wish we'd have done that a little sooner.
Yeah, because there's probably lots of fines along the way. Yeah. Lots of fines along the way. The fine of not being allocated properly, the fine of like moving to bonds or cash when the market went down, the fine of maybe not saving in the right tax bucket, optimally for you.
It all comes ultimately back to the goals of you could argue whether or not you should have a financial planner. You could argue how you should invest in the stock market. You could argue all these pros and cons of all the things, but ultimately which one is getting you to your goal.
Yeah, that's great. A couple other quotes from this chapter. Anything else that stood out?
The one for me is on page 158. It says, "Every job looks easy when you're not the one doing it. Every job looks easy when you're not the one doing it because the challenges faced by someone in the arena are often invisible to those in the crowd." Now, he didn't give this example in the book that I'm going to tell, but, we watch our son play baseball all the time. And, how many of you have ever been to a baseball game and there's a batter up and, you hear people, "Come on, just hit the ball." You're like, okay, well, duh, right? That's the goal. Hit the ball. Yeah. But, as spectators in the stands, we're not feeling what the batter is up against when they're standing there at the plate, right? So it's a completely different experience. And so just giving yourself some grace, right? Like maybe someone on the outside is telling you like, just do this, just do that. Well, it might not be that easy. They're not in your situation.
You're not seeing the price they're paying or what they're trying to do. Yeah, a little bit further down on that same page, it says, "Hold stocks for the long run. You'll hear it's good advice. But do you know how hard it is to maintain a long-term outlook when stocks are collapsing? Like everything else worthwhile, successful investing demands a price, but its currency is not dollar and cents. It's volatility, fear, doubt, uncertainty, and regret, all of which are easy to overlook until you're dealing with them in real time.
So powerful.
Yeah.
When stocks are going down,
Everybody's like,
all of us, even the
yeah.
professionals. That's why we have coaches, mentors, consultants, academics, right? The first thing we do is we consult the academics. What do the academics say? What do the mentors say? What do the greats, what does the great information out there say? And at the client level, it's,
They're coming to us.
I knew this, but I just need you to tell me. I need you to tell me that it was good for my, because it's still a sale. I'm got dividends, and those dividends actually went up, even though the value of the portfolio went down. And it's buying more shares at a better price. Okay.
Well, it's really easy when we say we're doing a financial plan when the stock market's up, and people are like, "Yeah, I'll be fine if it goes down. I see the plan's on track. I feel good."
Yeah.
And then the stock market starts to go down, and it doesn't feel as good as you said it was going to feel when it starts to do that.
I know when you're saying that, I'm thinking there's so many retirees that struggle. They say, I don't want stocks in my portfolio as a retiree because I don't want to have that. And, you have to realize when we talk about that, we're talking about the fact that you're using a very small amount of your money to live on, and the rest of it is working to get dividends. It's owning businesses, and these hard assets are paying you. And the paying you is what's helping you to outpace inflation, which keeps your paycheck going throughout life, and also your legacy goals, and kind of landing in a place proximate to where you want to be is the goal. And that's what financial plans help you to do. And so when we're talking about stock market and volatility, it shouldn't be precarious, in retirement. There should be a calmness and a sense of peace. And that calmness and sense of peace, should come from having a good plan and having a good understanding of how it's going to behave, and having some insight as to, when the market does have its drawdowns, that it's not comfortable, and it's not going to be. However, the ultimate goal is I want to outpace inflation. I want to be able to give myself a raise in my monthly paycheck as we saw the last couple of years, how the costs of everything have gone up.
Right.
So hopefully that kind of alleviates any fear people have.
Back to what Connie had said about the fee versus the fine and going into Disneyland. He says at the very end of the chapter, sometimes it rains at Disneyland. But if you view the admission fee as a fine, you'll never enjoy the magic. Find the price, then pay it.
Yeah. That's great.
That's good. Well, thank you for joining us today. And as you're listening to this episode, if some questions came up about your own financial plan, or if you feel you need to create or even update your financial plan, feel free to reach out to us through our website at brindleandbay.com. We're here to help, and feel free to share this episode, give us a like, leave a comment. Until next time.
Are you ready to take the next step in creating your own next chapter? Are you looking for calmness and clarity around your retirement future? We'd love to visit with you about that. It all starts with a 15-minute phone call, and you can get that set up on your phone or computer right now by going to brindleandbay.com, which is our website, and you would click on the button that says Let's Talk. Again, go to brindleandbay.com, click on the Let's Talk button, and let's get the conversation started.
Nick Davis is an investment advisor representative of Brindle and Bay Financial Advisors, a registered investment advisor. This show is for informational purposes only. Any exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered financial advice or a recommendation to buy or sell a financial vehicle. You should consult a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before taking any action. This program is not endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing company. Insurance licensed in Texas, number 1188639. Brindle and Bay Wealth Management is affiliated with Brindle and Bay Financial Advisors.